In July of 1944, after weeks of fierce fighting in Normandy, the battered soldiers of Easy Company returned to the quiet English village of Aldbourne. The contrast was striking. Only a short time earlier they had jumped into occupied France amid chaos, gunfire, and confusion. Now they found themselves back among the stone cottages and green fields of England. But even in this peaceful setting, the cost of the campaign was painfully clear. Captain Richard Winters, now the commanding officer of Easy Company, had been given an important and difficult responsibility. The Normandy campaign had left deep gaps within the company. Many men had been killed, others seriously wounded, and several key leaders were gone. Winters needed to rebuild the company's leadership structure, promoting men who had proven themselves under fire and preparing the unit for whatever battles might come next. The losses had been heavy. Out of the 139 paratroopers who had jumped into Normandy on June 6, Easy Company had suffered 65 casualties. Across the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, the numbers were just as grim. 18 officers and 32 non-commissioned officers had been lost during the campaign in France. These were not just statistics. They were experienced leaders, friends, and mentors whose absence would be deeply felt. To begin the process of rebuilding the company, Winters asked First Sergeant Deal to prepare a complete list of those who had been killed or wounded in action. Among the fallen were Easy Company's original commanding officer, Lieutenant Thomas Meehan, and First Sergeant William Evans. Meehan's aircraft had been shot down on the night of the invasion, leaving the company suddenly without its commander before the men had even reached the ground. With Meehan missing and presumed dead, Lieutenant Winters had stepped into leadership almost immediately after landing in Normandy. What began as a necessity quickly became a permanent responsibility. By July 1st, Winters had officially been promoted to captain and formally given command of Easy Company. Once back in England, he began reorganizing the company. Promotions were announced, and Winters took care to choose men who had demonstrated not only courage, but reliability and the ability to lead others in the chaos of combat. Several officers within the company were advanced in rank. Harry Welsh was promoted from second lieutenant to first lieutenant and appointed executive officer of Easy Company. Lynbuck Compton also received promotion to first lieutenant and was assigned command of the second platoon. Other officers newly assigned to Easy Company were also elevated to first lieutenant. T.A. Peacock took charge of the first platoon, Robert B. Brewer assumed leadership of the third platoon, and John G. Pausenchen became an assistant platoon leader. In addition, Charles Hudson received a battlefield commission, earning the rank of second lieutenant and joining Easy Company as another assistant platoon leader. Hudson had originally come from a company, but his leadership potential had been recognized during combat. Winters reflected often on the quality of the men who made up Easy Company. They had been forged through a demanding process long before Normandy. Their training began at Camp Toccoa in Georgia, where the famous climb up Currahee Mountain tested their endurance and determination. From there, they endured the rigors of jump school at Fort Benning, followed by months of further training both in the United States and later in England. By the time they parachuted into Normandy, these soldiers were already hardened professionals. Combat had only proven what their training had suggested. Easy Company possessed a group of men capable of forming the leadership backbone of many companies. Despite the severe casualties suffered during the invasion, including the loss of nearly the entire company headquarters section, Winters believed the company spirit remained strong. With the right promotions and assignments, he was confident Easy Company could recover without losing its leadership or morale. Meanwhile, the regiment itself faced a shortage of junior officers. Colonel Robert Sink requested recommendations for non-commissioned officers who deserved battlefield commissions and promotion to second lieutenant. Winters immediately thought of Staff Sergeant James L. Deal. Winters had known Deal since training days in the United States and had worked closely with him during their time in England. Deal was the kind of soldier every commander valued, motivated, dependable, and capable of taking initiative without being told what to do. Leadership style was calm and straightforward. He didn't rely on shouting or theatrics. His quiet confidence naturally earned the respect of the men around him. During the chaos of Normandy, after First Sergeant Evans and the entire company headquarters staff were lost, Winters had not hesitated in appointing Deal as the new first sergeant. Despite having little support or trained personnel, Deal managed to keep the company functioning. Recommending Deal for a battlefield commission was not an easy decision. Winters knew it meant losing an excellent first sergeant and a trusted friend. Nevertheless, he believed Deal deserved the opportunity. Tragically, Deal would later be killed in action in Holland, at the bridge in Zaan, on September 19. With Deal moving on to a commission, another promotion became necessary. Carwood Lipton, who had been serving as a staff sergeant, was selected to become the new first sergeant of Easy Company. To Winters, the choice seemed obvious. Lipton had the appearance and bearing of a first sergeant. More importantly, he carried himself with maturity and discipline. He was intelligent, dependable, and deeply committed to the well-being of the company. Lipton believed that leadership meant setting the example others should follow, and he held himself to the same standards he expected from the men. Later, Winters received a letter from Ed Tipper, who had been wounded and sent back to the United States. In the letter, Tipper wrote that in his opinion, Lipton was the finest non-commissioned officer in the entire Army, a statement that confirmed Winters' own judgment. Shortly after receiving his promotion, Lipton made an unusual administrative change. On the company roster prepared by First Sergeant Deal on June 30, 1944, his name had been listed as Clifford C. Lipton. However, when Lipton prepared the next roster on September 12, his name appeared as Carwood C. Lipton. Winters never quite understood the change, but he joked that perhaps rank carried certain privileges. Other promotions followed as well. Leo D. Boyle was elevated from sergeant to staff sergeant. Boyle was slightly older than most of the men in Easy Company, and his maturity set him apart. He was a disciplined, serious, non-commissioned officer who focused entirely on the job at hand. Winters believed Boyle would be particularly valuable in helping train the replacement soldiers who would soon join the company. Boyle was assigned to company headquarters to serve as Winters' close assistant. Part of Boyle's maturity may have come from events shortly before D-Day. On May 20, 1944, only days before Easy Company moved to the Normandy staging area, Boyle had married a young woman from Aldbourne named Win Hawkins. She was lively and attractive, and Boyle had quickly fallen in love with her. Coming from a deeply religious family, Win's father insisted that Boyle attend church regularly before granting permission for the marriage. Boyle did so faithfully, and the couple soon wed. Another promotion went to William T. Bill Garnier, who advanced from sergeant to staff sergeant and became the platoon sergeant for 2nd Platoon. Winters had known Garnier since their days at Camp Toccoa, where Winters had been his platoon leader. Over time, he had recommended Garnier for promotion first to corporal, then to sergeant and squad leader. Now, after his performance in Normandy, Winters had the opportunity to promote him once again. Garnier had fought bravely on D-Day. Winters had even recommended him for the Distinguished Service Cross, though the award was later reduced by the battalion to a Silver Star. Garnier and Lieutenant Compton both received the Silver Star for their actions during the attack on the German artillery battery on the morning of June 6. As it turned out, those two men would be the only members of Easy Company to receive the Silver Star during the entire war. Another promotion elevated Robert T. Burr Smith from sergeant to staff sergeant. Smith had proven himself a reliable and disciplined squad leader during the Normandy fighting. He was respected by his men and demonstrated the leadership needed to take on greater responsibility. Smith would replace Staff Sergeant Murray B. Roberts, who had been killed in Normandy, as Easy Company's supply sergeant. Additional promotions followed among the enlisted ranks. Promoted from corporal to sergeant were Kenneth Mercier, Denver Bull Randleman, and Arthur Uman. Promoted from private first class to sergeant were Donald Malarkey, Warren Skip Muck, Paul Rogers, and Myron Ranney. Ranney had once held the rank of sergeant before being demoted during the infamous Sobel Mutiny earlier in the war, but his performance in combat had earned him the rank again. Finally, several men were promoted from private first class to corporal, including Pat Christensen, Walter Gordon, John Plescia, Darrell Shifty Powers, and Levon Reese. Through these promotions and adjustments, Captain Winters gradually rebuilt the leadership structure of Easy Company. Though the losses of Normandy could never truly be replaced, the company remained strong. The men who stepped forward had earned their positions through training, hardship, and the brutal test of combat, and they would soon face even greater challenges in the battles that lay ahead.